talking about internships, no prior knowledge edition. I'm going to assume that you know literally nothing about how to get an internship, and you are just like me, who came in not knowing anything about this field, not knowing anybody in it, and none of my classes really taught about it. So I'm gonna break it down for you, all the things that you need to do right here, starting now. Before we get started, I'm going to remind you that I am a senior at Carnegie Mellon University. I had my FANG summer internship last summer, and I have job offers and stuff now, so I know what I'm talking about, hopefully, because if I don't, then I don't know who does. So, first, a quick rundown on what internships actually are. Basically, companies will hire students for a period of 8 to 12 weeks, and you work on a team in the company. It could be back-end teams, front-end teams. It really just depends on the company and the job. You could be doing Android stuff, iOS stuff, web development, who knows. So you get hired as a student. They generally will pay you. I would not go for non-paid interns. That's just kind of you doing labor for them for free, which is not great. Go to hopefully a reputable company, and they will hire you as an intern, and you get to work with their engineers for 2 to 3 months. And it's really great experience. That's basically what recruiters look for to actually get a job. There are 3 types of internships. Most students do summer internships because obviously you have school in the fall and the winter, and then in the summer you have a free time, and companies know this, so there's a lot of summer intern spots open usually in most companies. And then some companies will also have fall winter internships or spring internships, which basically means that you kind of take less classes in order to also incorporate the internship in there at the same time, or some students might take a semester off. It really just depends on what they want to do. But those are also available. Basically, the difference is that obviously you're working with the company at a different point in time, so that means that you also have to apply at a different point in time because the company will be recruiting those interns at different points in time. The first thing is going to be a resume. Yes, just like any job, you're gonna need to have a resume in store in order to apply for a job. So you need to write your resume. I have a video on that. Go check it out if you need to. Then the next thing that you're going to have to do is actually apply to jobs. So this would be on sites like LinkedIn, Glassdoor, Indeed. Basically, you just Google search software engineering internships, and then you will be able to find postings about software engineering internships. Postings will come from not just tech companies, but also other Fortune 500 companies and banks, blah, blah, blah. A bunch of companies need software engineering interns, so don't just think about only the large tech names. Definitely apply to a bunch of places. After you've applied to places, I'm going to bring your expectations way down here because you have never applied to companies for internships before. You might be assuming that every company that you apply to will get back to you, and that is not the case. I would say probably 95% of companies will just never respond to you at all. Aside from maybe the, oh, thank you for applying email that you get right after you actually submit the application, so that you know you actually submitted an application. Basically, most companies after that, you just never hear from them again. It's called being ghosted. Yes, companies do this too because they have just so many candidates. Sometimes the postings that you're applying to are really old and they've already filled all the positions and whatever, and they just don't bother telling you or taking it down. And it's really annoying, but it's just kind of how it goes. This means that you actually have to apply to a lot more companies than you would think to actually get a response. Obviously, if only 5% of the companies are responding to you, then you're gonna have to apply to a couple. So just know that. The next step after companies have actually responded to you is generally an OA, which is an online assessment. I also have a video about that if you don't really know how to prepare for them. But basically, online assessments are the company gives you some sort of questions that you have to go through, and it's basically a hoop that you have to jump through so that they know you can do some sort of basic programming before they actually take the time out of one of their engineers' day to go in and interview you. So online assessments are important to pass, and they're just another level that you have to go through before you even hit the interview stage. Note that some online assessments are automated. Generally, it's automated if you get the online assessment link in an email, maybe an hour or two after you've applied or a day after you have applied. But If you receive it maybe a week or two later or a couple days later, then generally someone has already screened it, and then you basically have passed the first resume screening and they have sent you an online assessment. So, you know, you can just kind of weigh how much that company has put in effort, I suppose, but I guess it really doesn't matter if you're not being picky. After you pass your online assessment, then you get into the interview round, which is usually the most nerve-wracking round for people because obviously you're basically being tested in front of an engineer. So there are two types of interviews in this field, behavioral and technical. The difference is, for technical interviews, you are actually required to write code and show that you can program. While for behavioral interviews, they don't have any sort of coding problems that you have to do. So technical interviews are the more nerve-wracking ones because obviously you have to show that you can code. What does this mean? Pretty much they sit you down in front of an engineer, or maybe a couple engineers if you're unlucky, and they give you a coding problem that you should be able to solve within 30 to 45 minutes, and you have to solve it and write out the code. That is a technical interview, and some companies will have multiple rounds of technical interviews before they will actually decide whether they want you to be an intern or not. On the other hand, behavioral interviews are what they sound like. It's kind of looking at your social behavior. Basically, they ask you questions about how do you work on a team, your problem-solving skills, your social interactions. They're kind of just more talking to you and just kind of judging your character instead of testing your coding abilities. Not every company does both of these things. Sometimes a company will only do technical interviews, and then other times a company might only do behavioral interviews. Generally, the non-tech company, maybe banks or other smaller companies, startups, will not have technical interviews, but instead will just have a couple of phone behavioral interviews with a manager or a hiring person, and that will be it. But for most tech companies, you're gonna have to do at least one technical interview. Now note that not every company does OAs and interviews. Sometimes you just only have interviews, sometimes you have OAs and interviews, sometimes you just have to do like 5 interviews. It really just depends on the job in the company. If you're still curious about technical interview stuff, basically I would recommend checking out LeetCode because these are the types of problems that will show up on your interviews, and I will also come out with a video on how to prepare for your technical interviews soon, so make sure to subscribe and ring the notification bell so that you don't miss that. After you've passed all of your interviews, the company will let you know whether you have gotten an internship offer or not, and if you have, then they will give you a deadline and you just have to basically sign at that point. They'll tell you how much you earn, whether there are benefits, blah, blah, blah. You can negotiate start time sometimes. All of that stuff is just the easy stuff, just logistics. At that point, you have an internship and then you don't have to stress anymore. Or maybe you do because you are going through multiple interviews with different companies at the same time, which happens to a lot of people. This journey is going to take a while, probably at least a month to a couple months. It really just depends on which part of the process you're kind of getting stuck on. A lot of people find that getting the actual interview and getting any sort of response from the company is usually the hardest part, just because if you start out with 0 sort of experience and stuff, it's really hard to kind of get companies to actually pay attention to you and respond to you. So I have videos out on that, so go check those out. But otherwise, that is just the basic breakdown of how to get an internship, and good luck to you. That is it, guys. This is just how to get an internship for the person who literally has no clue, just like I was. Don't worry, you will definitely get there someday. But for now, that is Becoming Her, signing out.